Hello, this is Jude.
And this is John.
And today we are reflecting on a little piece of this book called Companion to the Poor by Viv Grigg. This is the original 1984 version. Came out of New Zealand, just as Viv came out of New Zealand. And this is a story of his journey of moving into a Filipino slum and journeying with the people there. And so the section of the book that you have is called Living as a Poor Man. So it's a little sliver of this book right here. Now this book comes out of specific context because Viv moves into a specific context, but he also comes out of a specific context. So that context is that he's a white middle-class New Zealander moving into a slum in the Philippines.
In contrast, for example, I moved into Los Angeles as a black intellectual that grew up actually quite poor. And so when I joined Interchange, on one level, my economic standings actually improved and went up.
Because he married me.
Even before I married you, if that's scary enough, but that's true.
Okay.
At the same time, I moved in also as a minority and a double minority. So when Jude was asked what did people ask?
Well, people often thought I was a teacher or a social worker when I moved in.
For me, the question was, ¿Quién es este pinche negrito?
Hey, this is a video.
Oh, sorry, but and then also, they thought either I was a drug user or a drug dealer or both.
Okay. So where we come from makes a big difference in how we read this, and that's something you can talk about in your discussions. Viv started off in middle-class ministry in the Philippines with the Navigators, and then God really started to speak to him about a heart for the poor and building holistic churches from among the poor. Viv has been this is really what Viv has given his life to for many years. He's married to a Brazilian. They have 3 beautiful children. And he's been a part of catalyzing a variety of movements that are reflected in this, the same as what's reflected in this section that we're reading.
This movement has been true for many people in the gospel, whether it's what we see the movement of Christ in Philippians 2, whether you see St. Francis of Assisi moving from his middle class
which he references right here,
or whether you look at someone like Toyohiko Kagawa, who moves out of that frame of reference, the movement of someone like Mother Teresa or Shane Claiborne. There are many people that God has called out of one context to move into missions in another, and that is often meant laying aside wealth and power.
So you'll see me looking down sometimes because my notes are on the floor. John doesn't use notes when he does these things, but I have points 1, 2, and 3 clearly laid out for myself. So just
Jude also doesn't publicly thumb her nose.
No, but you're fixing my hair here. Okay. Some of you will recognize the name of Viv Grigg. He also writes a chapter in the new book, Living Mission. He writes a second chapter. He also has a history with some of us here in Interchange, especially with the LA team, and also, I believe, with the Blooms in Minneapolis. But the LA team, before we were part of Interchange, and this is very nice to be able to share this with you because in my email drafts, as part of this 25th anniversary, where we were reflecting on the past, I have a very unfinished email. So now I'm going to share it with you. The community in LA, the team in LA, was actually started in 1987 by an internship that was started by Viv Grigg. There were 5 people out of that internship who moved into the Cambria apartment building. Of those 5, John Shorrock is the one that is still part of Interchange. If John weren't on sabbatical, maybe John would be doing this, but he's on sabbatical. So you have us again. So Viv had this internship that would have been a few years after this book was published. And so the team originally was a part of Servants, a group that was then called Servants Among the Poor. And so John was a part of that, moved into the Cambria building. I joined a year later. Paul Smith came a year later. And for a variety of reasons, we picked a local name called Cambria Christian Community, because at that time, that particular version of Servants wasn't really sending people. Most of us were planning to go overseas. And so we took the name Cambria Christian Community, which some of you are familiar with.
Yeah. Back in 1993, I was actually the first of a group of interchange interns. So I actually moved in when the community moved from being part of Servants to being part of interchange. And that has its own story.
So we got hooked up with Interchange through Bobby and Marilyn Clinton at Fuller, who Bobby was on the board, and Bobby and Marilyn would go to these conferences, and when they came back, Marilyn would say to me, Jude, you have to talk to John Hayes and the people from Interchange, because they're doing just what you guys are doing. So that started our courting process with Santa Ana Interchange folks, and in 1992, at the end of 1992, the entire LA team joined Interchange. So that is the tie-in between Viv Grigg and...
So I don't know if I've ever publicly thanked both the Hayeses and the Clintons for that, because I got to meet this wonderful,
okay, let's
a little bit off the
here.
topic,
Okay.
but it is really a wonderful truth. I did get to meet Jude, among other things. Yeah.
So the content then is in this book is about Viv moving in. Is happening around 1980. But you know, there's still a lot of really good things in there in terms of what it's like to actually move into a neighborhood and the different things that we encounter, the different things we have to navigate. For example, he talks about he needs a little bit extra meat in his diet, because if just because of the way he's raised, and he won't be able to function if he doesn't have, you know, enough food. So just the whole of what does it mean to incarnate or to be a neighbor and to move in, and all the different lifestyle choices that that involves.
So even if my neighbors call me Juan Rodriguez de Zacatecas, doesn't make me a Mexican. I really, I'm always an inferior Mexican, and I really need to be the person who God made me to be in the midst of identification.
So I have a little story about how this has worked out in my life that I've been reflecting on a little bit. So I'm going to present this as a little bit of a case study that you can think about and maybe discuss, because I know that it's probably similar to some of the things that you've wrestled with in your own life. And one is, John's telling me to speak a little louder.
No time.
Oh, time. So it's about the dentist. What kind of dentist does one go to, knowing that most of the poor can't go to a dentist? So we're identifying, so what do we do about a dentist? So my early years here, I used to go to USC Dental School. Also took Chris there and brought some other people there, and that was a good choice. And then when I started teaching at Fuller, I had a dental plan. It was an HMO, and one of the dentists was right in my neighborhood, right on 6th Street. I thought, wow, I should go to a local dentist, you know, and just be able to walk there around the corner on 6th Street. So I started going to this dentist. He was a really nice man. And he kept telling me what great teeth I had. And I'm like, you know, really, my teeth aren't that great. So then I started noticing who was coming, and I was like, this is really a neighborhood dentist. And I went there for a time. You know, they would clean my teeth, and that was about it. And then after a while, a few years ago, he said to me, you need some major work done on your teeth. And I don't do that here. I'm more like a welfare dentist. And you have a dental plan. And so why don't you find yourself another dentist and get your dental work done? So that brought me to another dentist, and which I found out that I had pretty serious issues with my gums, which this other dentist, it was preventative, and he had never talked to me about. And so then I started realizing there's, of course, implications to the choices we make about where we go as a dentist.
This has been Jay
and Jay
from LA.
So let me know what kind of dentist you go to, or if you go to a dentist, and we can talk about that.